Dream to me. The creature that was not really an old woman at all, save in the most fundamental and the most superficial ways, rocked thoughtfully in her chair near the fire. The wind, and not just the wind, howled outside, but in here it was warm and cosy. She cupped her bowl of sweet green tea in one clawed, withered hand, blowing on it gently. Near her feet, a youth of perhaps 12 years of age painstakingly cleaned soot from the gaps between the hearthstones with a rough wire brush, and a trough of water that never stopped being just a little too hot for comfort. There was a commotion at the window. Fluttering, pecking, scrabbling, scratching, muffled swearing. Both the old woman creature and the youth looked up. "You mind your chores," she rasped, "or it'll be cold supper again." The youth quickly bent back to their task. The lower part of the window opened, allowing the freezing night air and a few dusting motes of what was probably snow to intrude into the warm cottage. A damp black bird hopped onto the sill, shaking its feathers, and almost immediately beginning to steam. The window dropped closed behind it, nearly catching its tail feathers, as it took a moment to compose itself.
"There you are," said the blackbird, unnecessarily. "Always in the last place I look."
The bird peered at the youth working in front of the fire with one incurious yellow eye, then launched itself across the cluttered cottage to land on the little table next to the rocking chair. It expressed corvid delight at discovering a bowl of still living worms that had almost certainly always been there and not just spontaneously appeared. The old woman creature continued to rock, sipping her tea, while the big black bird filled its belly. Then, indistinctly, through a mouthful of particularly fat and chewy worm, it said,
"There's a missive from young Ematius, grandmother, just as you said. There's several bits and pieces, but the interesting part, I thought, is that their new throne would very much like to meet with you."
He paused and plumped up his feathers slightly before continuing.
"And they want to meet me in particular, because I am a delight. I told you that civil servant and I were getting along famously, and he has clearly been singing my praises, so—"
The old monster made a noise deep in her chest that was probably a sound of amusement. "Ah, no, my little bird. I have other tasks in mind for you. Once you are rested and fed, you will be winging back to the Empire, but not to preen and be fed dainties. I want your beady little eye on matters in the south. No, my plump little black-feathered delight. I'll send someone else to receive young Ematius and Emperor Vesna."
"You will meet with them, then?"
"Of course." The old woman thing seemed surprised her herald needed to ask. "Why wouldn't I? There's a long tradition of sensible thrones meeting with me to talk about the challenges of leadership. Vesna is Varushkan, and has a Varushkan's good sense. I look forward to a quiet chat with them about why they have made the immensely unwise decision to try and lead the Empire, which, judging from everything I've ever seen of it, will be singularly ungrateful at every opportunity."
"There's some other things as well,"
said Anushak indistinctly. His mistress made the odd chuckling noise again. "I'm sure there are, my sweet little messenger, and you can tell me all about them while I finish my tea." She raised her voice then. "But not while there are little pots with big ears paying significantly too much attention to the conversation of their elders." The youth, who had stopped scrubbing the hearthstones and lacked the good sense to pretend not to be listening, startled and looked guilty. "Time for bed, young sparrow," said the mistress of the cottage, not unkindly. "What have you learned?"
"It's a pointless task," they said boldly. "The stones will be dirty again in the morning, and they'll need cleaning again, and nobody will even notice. It's just like being at home. Nobody will notice if you do the job well, but everyone will complain if you do it badly."
The old woman thing smiled then, showing her sharp teeth. "Well done. You may have hot milk with your biscuits, young sparrow. Now, away to bed. Master Anushak and I have a lot to talk about, and not just young Ematius' missive."
"Honestly,"
mumbled Anushak as the youth left the room in the direction of the kitchen.
Sometimes I think you set these things up just to show off how clever you are. Nobody will notice if you do the job well, but everyone will complain if you do it badly indeed. How coincidentally apposite. I'm flattered if that was for my benefit.
Wise Rangara didn't reply, just continued to rock on her chair and sip her tea, but there was perhaps the ghost of a smile on her wrinkled lips. Overview. The 6 Imperial Archmages are each empowered to send a plenipotentiary message to a single Eternal of their realm each season. The Eternals are bound to respond to their communication, although very rarely another entity from that realm will speak on their behalf. Their response might involve a formal parley or a private meeting with the Archmage. They might respond directly to the message, or they might decline to meet for some reason. Some of the responses have been coloured by the mandate enacted by the Imperial Synod. Uriana Neofoti of the House of the Wanderer has urged Imperial citizens to be very cautious of deals with inhuman powers, and to pay close attention to those who seek to make them. While the mandate has been broadly ignored in Varushka and Urizen, it has led to a great deal of discussion in other nations, and it seems some Eternals at least are aware of its impact. During the winter solstice, each Archmage dispatched a plenipotentiary, and as the spring equinox approaches, 6 Eternals send messengers to deliver their replies. 4 have agreed to meetings, although not necessarily formal parleys, while 2 have decided to offer their boons directly to the magicians of the Empire. In one case, that might prove significantly contentious. Siaka. The creature that emerges into Anvil a few weeks before the spring equinox is very different to the beasts that visited in summer last year, or in the summer before that. It has a dishevelled, human-like aspect, green-tinged skin pocked with barnacles, wrapped in ragged cloth. It does not bother to identify itself, instead striding down to the hub to speak to the civil service. For all its humanoid appearance, there can be little doubt who it represents. It brings with it the smell of the storm and the taste of salt water. Indeed, the thing seems to be possessed of a terrible, furious energy, as one unsuspecting highborn steward of the dead discovers when they accidentally stray into its path. With a touch, the harbinger sends the poor young person sprawling, and when they rise they are hurled 6 meters or more into a small group of Imperial orcs. The messenger doesn't break stride, but their assault means that when they do reach the hub, there is a cluster of militia and several interested onlookers following in their wake. Before the militia can arrest them, they deliver their message. They are an emissary of the salt-born devourer, the mother of Rex. Their mistress has heard the words of Ibis Briarheart, and has no interest in parley. They have, indeed, removed their protection from the Grendel, whatever the Archmage thinks that was, but not because Briarheart demanded it, but because High Priestess Siobhan and her people earned it. The spring storms racking the Imperial coast are welcome, but Siaka has no interest in allowing the Archmage to command them. The Mistress of Storms is not bidden by any mortal. For the Archmage, the Empress of Sharks has a simple message. If the Empire stops cowering behind its wards of enmity, Siaka will send her heralds to murder the weak and exalt the strong. No bullshit of 6 heralds at a time. As many of her children as can reach the Empire will do so, and they will run rampant, bringing storm and fury, an unconstrained revel of bloodshed and destruction where those Imperials strong enough to endure the tempest will be empowered to take what they deserve and destroy their rivals. This is the nature of the storm, to ravage and destroy. It will not be constrained any more than spring magic will be constrained. Remove the enmity, and the Thunder Who Speaks will teach Imperial magicians more about spring magic in a season than they could learn in a lifetime of study and practice. And so Ibis Briarheart is clear, this would not be a trial, some test to see if the Empire are deserving of Siaka's favour. The strong have no need of friends. The bloodshed, slaughter and disorder that this would cause is the boon they would win by having the strength to put aside their protections and face the storm head on. As to the rest, the Mistress of Rex is not unhappy with the people of the Empire. 12,000 warriors tested and found wanting in Madruga and Marive, and the only shame is that the Freeborn chose to sail the weak course of protection rather than the Storm's course of thunder and vengeance. That alone is enough to earn a little of Siaka's favour. So she offers boons, not to the Archmage, but to the magicians of the Empire. Like everything in the world, the Conclave's Ward of Enmity has weaknesses, and one of them is that, as with any wall, those inside can choose to open the gates. So, for the coming spring equinox, in celebration of the mayhem the Empire helps to spread in the Bay of Katazar, the Saltborn Devourer will offer her blessings to any Imperial magician prepared to ask for them. With that, the herald spins on its heel and strides back through Anvil. Any who get in its way are dealt with the same way as the unfortunate steward of the dead, hurled from its path by irresistible storm winds, and after the second time that happens, people scramble to get out of its way. Details of the boons Siaka offers Imperial magicians can be found in the accompanying Hurricane Party, Wind of Fortune. Civil Service Commentary. It's rare for the civil service to add a commentary to a message from an Eternal, but in this case they have made an exception. Removing enmity from Siaka would allow her heralds to enter the Empire freely if they wished. As long as she was not granted amity, and as long as no further magic was used to exacerbate the situation, such as Hallow of the Green World, the destruction she would cause would not be on the same scale as the recent full-scale invasion of Cold Sun. It is unquestionable that there would be extensive loss of life and destruction. It would be impossible to predict which Regio her heralds might use to enter the Empire. There are spring Regio in every Imperial territory. Given that Siaka's herald has been clear this is not a test, that it is not a way for the Empire to gain additional boons from Siaka or change her attitude toward the Empire in any way, they recommend strongly that if the Conclave plan to do this, they consider endorsing the Act immediately after the enmity is removed. Any declaration of endorsement before the enmity is removed would most likely be unconstitutional. Eleonaris. Venator, Knight Hunter of Hierarch, Eleonaris, has visited Anvil in the past on behalf of his liege. A year ago, the herald journeyed to Anvil to speak specifically with several members of House de Gauvin. A month after the winter solstice, Venator returns to Anvil as an emissary of Eleonaris, in answer to the plenipotentiary of the Archmage of Summer. During the solstice, the long-serving highborn Brother Luke stepped down from the position. Their successor is a Dornish enchantress, Mirella of the Twisted Rose. It is to Mirella that Eleonaris' message is addressed, and concerns a meeting in the Hall of Worlds to take place during the spring equinox. An emissary of Eleonaris will attend the Hall of Worlds at 2 in the afternoon on Saturday, as part of a formal delegation from their mistress's domain. The Queen of Scarlet and Gold requests that the Archmage of Summer bring House de Gauvin, especially Lady Cecilia de Gauvin, to meet with her herald to see the fulfilment of their oath. The meeting will not be a formal parley, but Venator seems unconcerned about the ability of the Archmage, as host of the meeting, to ensure good order. One potential fly in the ointment is that, as of the autumn equinox 384 YE, 2 prominent members of House de Gauvin, the witch Lady Rosalind de Gauvin, and the knight-errant Lord Sidlaw Edric Charge de Gauvin, are declared sorcerers. Since summer 380 YE, this means they are prohibited from knowingly interacting with Eternals or their heralds. Venator has indicated that both are expected to attend the meeting, possibly due to the matter of their role in the insult done to Eleonaris' companion Prince Hierarch, but the request of an Eternal does not trump Imperial law. What is more, endorsement cannot override an explicit legal statement from the Conclave or another Imperial body of state, so the Conclave cannot use it to permit the de Gauvins to attend the meeting. The only way the Conclave can grant them license to attend the meeting is to remove the declaration of sorcery. There is a second matter for discussion as well, which is more delicate. When Imperial citizens of the Shattered Tower assaulted Prince Hayark some years ago, they attacked him with a certain dagger. The dagger is of unknown provenance, but is described as being cold to the touch, with a seething hatred locked within it. This was the weapon that was born against the Griffin Rider, and if the Empire is serious about making amends with him and with the court of the Lady of Penance, he requires it to be presented to him during the spring equinox. Specifically, Eleonaris requests that the Knight Protector of Summer, Rydian de Rondel, as the bearer of the Banner of Summer, bring the dagger to the meeting in the Hall of Worlds. They are charged with this matter because if they succeed in their quest to acquire the blade, they will be protecting Dornish lands from the beasts unleashed by Lord Hayark in his righteous fury. While the Lady of Penance would always wish to hear tales of victory, especially over monsters like the Scions of Oblivion, it is her judgment that such stories have no place in a meeting that addresses insults done to a member of her court. As such, she declines to hear them. Perhaps when due restitution has been made to her Lord of the Hawks, there will be time for such merry business. Venator has one final note for the Archmage, the one known as the Lady of the Semilac, who was once in the service of another, now stands between the Court of Penance, the Court of the Unicorn King, and the Court of the Summer Mage. All three have offered her a place, but she has so far declined to commit to any one of the three. It would be unseemly for the Queen of the Fields of Red and Gold to serve as a messenger, but if the Archmage wishes to speak to the Doyenne of the Semilac, perhaps one of the other two monarchs of the Summer Realm might be prepared to arrange such a parley. Wise Rangara. Very shortly after the winter solstice, an impressively aged figure appears at the hub in Anvil. It's not entirely clear where they came from, but their mud-stained attire suggests they had travelled a long distance on foot. They have with them a basket of honey cakes, which they take a grim delight in offering to anyone prepared to take one. By all accounts, they are very nice. The figure introduces herself as Alta Beckerin, and says she has come as an emissary of Clever Spider, in response to another missive from the young Emetius. The Pale Raven has sorted through the various requests the Winter Archmage has made, and weighed each one in turn. She has decided that she would welcome the opportunity to speak with the throne, Emperor Vesna, during the spring equinox. She proposes a quiet chat about the past, the present, and the future. The Archmage of Winter may attend if they wish, but the Eternal expects Emetius to be seen and not heard. They are permitted to be there partly to reassure those who might fear for the safety of the Empress, and partly because Wise Rangara does not actively dislike them. The meeting will take place at 4:30 on Saturday, and an emissary will be sent to the Hall of Worlds to bring these guests to a place where they might parley. When the civil service respectfully point out that the parley will likely clash with the timing of the Imperial Senate, which the throne might wish to attend, Alta Beckerin laughs hoarsely, and then sarcastically thanks them for teaching Grandmother Winter that water is wet and rain falls down. The herald does, however, stress that kind Rangara will not be insulted if the Queen of Rain and Thunder chooses to attend to her earthly duties. Wisdom is only found in choices, after all. Wise Rangara is confident someone as busy as Emetius will have no shortage of other things to concern himself with instead of the parley. The Northern Eagle is not something with which Wise Rangara intends to concern herself with right now. The army may be quite old, it is true, but the soldiers who make it up are just the kind of rambunctious young people who make a racket and get underfoot and lack the sense to come in out of the rain. On the other hand, they do generally seem to possess a little common sense. Their proficiency at using the terrain to their advantage is not to be dismissed out of hand. Perhaps there can be more discussion of why exactly Wise Rangara should pay attention to them. It's a little unclear how much of this description is a verbatim quote from Grandmother Winter, and how much is extemporization from the Herald. The matter of Heart's blood has raised some amusement with the White Raven, apparently. It is her opinion that there is a lesson to be gained from the situation the Archmage describes. Also, the oldest one understands the Imperial Synod has urged all their people save those of Varushka and Urizen to be extremely careful in their dealings with powers such as she. Far be it from her to flaunt their will, especially when, arguably, they are taking a wise course of action. As the Archmage has asked, and as the mandate of the Synod does not appear to extend to the people of the north and southeast, Alta Beccarin presents 3 possible opportunities for the Archmage to consider. The Hollow Stone. The hollow stone that stands at Marshstand Skerry in Ossium takes advantage of a rare phenomenon. The sacrificial stone is shared between the wild and the waste. Wise Rangara displaced the former patron of the wasteland part of the stone at the request of the Conclave. If the Imperial Conclave were to displace the patron of the wild, the master of venom, and dedicate the entire stone to Wise Rangara, then instead of its current bounty of Viz and Crystal Mana, it would provide 5 measures of Heart's blood each season. Presuming the sacrifices continued, of course. This would likely anger the Spring Suzerain, but one can't secure the things one wants if one is not prepared to make mortal enemies in the process, can one? If the Conclave wished to take Wise Rangara's offer, they would need a declaration of concord, indicating that they no longer recognize our Halogen as patron of the stone, and that his influence should be removed. This would present an opportunity to realign the stone at the summer solstice, and given the stone would be aligned to our Halogen at the time, it would likely involve some kind of dreadful fight. The Bleak Tower. Alternatively, there are places in Urizen steeped in loss and suffering that Wise Rangara finds interesting. The Bleak Tower in particular is of interest, especially given its emphasis on the cultivation of herbs and the benefits it grants to the other herbalists in the war-torn nation of wizards. The current custodian of the Bleak Tower is Starakios of the lighthouse at Nikephoros. If they raise a declaration of concord in which they announce that they accept the aid of their wise grandmother and commit themselves and their successors to protecting not only the Bleak Tower but the herb gardens of Zenith as a whole, and the Conclave agrees, then Wise Rangara will grant a boon. An old stone statuette of a raven that lies in her possession will be installed at the arboretum in the tower. This will cause the twisted trees there to weep sap more freely, raising the amount of Heart's blood they are able to claim from 6 pawns a season to 9. It will also have other effects, however. The bounty of herbs offered to the gardens of Urizen will shift and change. Instead of 2 random herbs and 1 dram of cerulean mazarine, they will produce 2 random herbs and a dram of blade root, the better to deal with the lingering influence of the Druge. She will also grant the custodian a little gift, a token of appreciation, that will help them ensure Urizen is never short of the herbs it needs to heal its broken hearts. The Tower of the Fall. Finally, there is the Tower of the Fall, another structure rebuilt after the torments of the Druge. The place was once the lair of a powerful lieutenant of Blood on the Snow, who appears to possibly still be at large. It's a testament to the resilience of Urizen that it was ever rebuilt. If the current keeper of the Tower of the Fall, Sabina, raises a declaration of concord during the spring equinox in which they ask for wise Rangara's assistance, and commit themselves and their successors to the protection of Urizen from the creatures of Agrement, she will offer them a white raven, just as she has offered to the custodian of the Bleak Tower. This will increase the flow of heart's blood by 3 pawns, but reduce the amount of crystal mana by the same amount. She will also provide the custodian with a ritual token to help them tend their garden each year at the spring equinox. When it's pointed out that individual magicians do not have the power to raise declarations of concord, Alta Beckerin becomes waspish, and in turn points out that any member of a conclave order can present a declaration, and that the rogue declaration exists for those who are not members of an order for whatever reason. These 3 offers, incidentally, are available only during the spring equinox. There's also some concern about the imperial title holders changing the responsibilities of their position in this way. The old herald shrugs this off as well. It is the conclave, ultimately, that is making their opinion on this matter known, and in the event anyone wishes to ignore that, and the agreement with Wise Rangara, the heart's blood can stop flowing as easily as it started. Blessings can so easily become curses, after all. Cynokinon. At the midpoint between winter and spring, a sphere of light appears from the Imperial Regio just as the sun is setting. Barely 6 inches across, it drifts through Anvil, the gentle sound of chiming bells following in its wake. The entity politely converses with anyone who stops to speak to it, engaging in small talk that mostly revolves around questions of how a person fits into the hierarchy of the throne. It understandably takes the orb a little while to arrive at the hub. Similar beings have visited Anvil over the last few years. They are heralds of that which lies above all. Last time they unleashed peals of loud music, and proudly announced their message in tones that might best be described as stentorian. This emissary is much more discreet, bobbing gently before the civil service desk and waiting politely to be acknowledged. When it is, it quickly delivers the message of its master, the turning mirror. Cynokinon will not offer aid against Cold Sun, not in the way the Archmage requests, certainly not in a way that requires reliance on weaker forms of magic. It also proposes that the problem the Empire has faced is not that the Scions of Oblivion are difficult to find. On the much more important matter between the Archmage of Day and Sage Christoph of Sark, however, the Wheel of Light is quite happy to facilitate the meeting. It is rarely an error to foster reflection and understanding. A suitable chamber to allow such a meeting will be made available at 5:30 in the afternoon on Saturday. The people of Tsark have agreed that they will be happy to receive Archmage Gralka, and they ask her to bring a small party with them. It should include a specific orc who will make themselves known, who they for whatever reason do not wish to name in any kind of public address. They would also like the Archmage to bring 2 or 3 humans from the nation of Urizen, who are philosophically trained. A discussion is sought on the nature and applications of the net of the heavens, as well as a mutual sharing of spiritual experiences and truths. In total, no more than 6 people, including the Archmage, are invited to the chamber. However, Apex Hyperion includes a restriction of their own. It is aware that the Empire's Imperial Synod have recently decreed that their citizens should not accept offers and deals from entities such as itself without reflection of their own. As such, Cynokinon requests that the Archmage include suitable oversight. The Witness of Conclave, who is believed to be Duncan of Ashhill, is charged with identifying those who treat with Eternals to the detriment of fellow Imperial citizens. Presumably, if they, or a suitable proxy, are included in the party, there will be no concern of any inappropriate action on behalf of Cynokinon or its emissaries. Estivus. Just a few weeks before the spring equinox, there is a strange encounter at the Imperial Regio. A strange herald of twisted metal calmly sits down and starts speaking to whoever is nearby with a message from the bronze artisan. The Archmage requested several specific things, which the Hammer of Flame and Stone has carefully considered. The Empire wishes to purchase tools of war. The forges of Shakal are always happy to provide such things. With due reflection, she chooses to make a number of offers available to Imperial magicians and institutions. The Herald cautions, however, that the artificers of the law have made all the cities of the Iron Labyrinth aware of the dictates of the Imperial Synod, encouraging their people to be extremely cautious in their dealing with powers such as the City of Flame and Stone. The city does not wish to risk its equitable relationship with the Empire, and will bear this lawful injunction in mind when it comes to arrangements with Imperial citizens. On one particular point, however, the Eternal has little to offer. There is no pass between Zenith and Sarangrave that might be closed. The border between Urizen and the Malum is a long stretch of woody marsh that runs between the foothills and the fever water. While the Queen of Brass and Iron sees the importance of protecting the Crucible of Fate, it is not prepared to exert the kind of influence that might be needed to create a barrier there. There are also few ways to do so without inflicting serious damage on the territory itself. When it comes to garrisoning soldiers there, the Imperial Senate is already busy creating a fortification in the forest of Lustri that will serve that purpose. Not very much progress appears to have been made on it, but once complete it would go some way towards slowing down any invasion from Sarangrave, especially if it were built up to the point even the cowardly Druge could not ignore it. The offers Estivus has prepared are detailed as part of the Cities of the Iron Labyrinth, Wind of Fortune. Lashanar. About a week before the spring equinox, a brightly feathered herald calling itself Synonym appears with a flurry at the Imperial Regio. It flits around Anvil, repeatedly distracted by the preparations for the coming summit. Meeting, crest, parliament, council, peak. Eventually it finds a civil servant to receive its message, missive, epistle, tidings, from the gibbering ambassador. Lashanar has considered, contemplated, pondered, mulled over the Archmage's request, spending many hours in conversation with a select few Night Mages who were present at recent battles against the Scions of Cold Sun. The notion of attracting all its armies into one place is an exciting one, but seems a little moot, redundant, impotent, fruitless, now that many of them have been disbanded thanks to the heroic, glorious, triumphant, valorous efforts of Imperial heroes. Instead, Lashanar's attention has alighted on the remnants of the fire beacon in Segura. As the Keeper of the Gates of Wisdom understands it, the Scions that remain in Burnish are soon to scatter across the plains. They could reform, remake, reconstitute, regenerate their forces with access to a sufficiently powered Regio affiliated with the Realm of Day. He believes this would most likely be the Ring of Dust and Glass, which Lashanar believes to be where the army emerged from in the first place. Lashanar is willing to lend his power, prowess, potency, aptitude, to a ritual that will permanently realign this Regio to the Night Realm. This would require a practiced coven to visit the Regio and cast Align the Celestial Net at its basic magnitude of 30. The Eternal would send one of his heralds to empower the enchantment, shifting the Regio all the way into alignment with night, then claim, seize, take, grab the Regio for themselves to make the effect permanent. The Voice of the Winds believes this would also draw, attract, entice, allure the Scions that remain in Segura to return to the Regio, where they could be picked off by the local Kohan and Corsair warriors. Having investigated, examined, scrutinized, poked the Regio in question, he has detected the lingering influence of Cold Sun on a small group of creatures from the Day Realm which guard it. These once quiet, analytical creatures have become furiously opposed to all expressions of art and creativity. So, While the ritual is being performed, he will need a number of musicians, storytellers, poets, and other artists to come and perform around each of these guardians. He hopes this will restore them to their former selves and allow them to leave the Regio. This may have strange effects upon the performers, as the lingering magic of Cold Sun lashes out against the expressions of creativity that it so despises, hates, abhors, resents. A conjunction of the Sentinel Gate has been identified that will reach the ring of dust and glass in Burnish during the upcoming summit. The conjunction opens at 11 p.m. on Friday and will allow up to 50 people to pass through. Lashanar will be sending a herald or two to meet the Imperial heroes once they have passed through the gate. He suggests that the Archmage of Night either take responsibility for arranging this or find someone to do so on their behalf. Accessibility. This encounter is an opportunity for Night Mages and performers to pass through the Sentinel Gate for a mixture of ritual magic and performance in a somewhat strange atmosphere. It will take place across an area of woods a couple of minutes' walk from the Sentinel Gate, on flat ground.